Wednesday, March 20. Declare his glory among the nations. Read Psalm 96. What manifold aspects of worship are mentioned in this psalm? Psalm 96, beginning at verse 1. O sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless his name. Proclaim the good news of his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations, his wonders among all peoples. For the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods, for all the gods of the peoples are idols. But the Lord made the heavens. Honour and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. Give to the Lord, O families of the peoples, give to the Lord glory and strength. Give to the Lord the glory due his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. So worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Tremble before him, all the earth. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. The world also is firmly established. It shall not be moved. He shall judge the peoples righteously. Let the heavens rejoice, and let the earth be glad. Let the sea roar and all its fullness. Let the field be joyful and all that is in it. Then all the trees of the woods will rejoice before the Lord, for he is coming to judge the earth. He shall judge the world with righteousness, and the peoples with his truth. Worship includes singing to the Lord, as we read in verses 1 and 2, praising his name in verse 2, proclaiming his goodness and greatness in verses 3 and 4, and bringing gifts to his temple in verse 8. In addition to these familiar traits of worship, Psalm 96 highlights one not-so-obvious aspect of worship, the evangelical dimension in proclaiming the Lord's kingdom to other people in verses 2, 3, and 10. Yet singing, praising, bringing gifts, and proclaiming the gospel are not separate actions, but are varied expressions of worship. The proclamation of God's salvation to all nations gives substance to praise and content to worship. Notice how the reasons for worship coincide with the message proclaimed to other peoples. For the Lord is great, in verse 4. For all the gods of the peoples are idols, but the Lord made the heavens, in verse 5. And in verse 10, the Lord reigns. And for he is coming to judge the earth, in verse 13. Thus, the goal of evangelism is to unite other peoples with God's people, and ultimately the whole creation in the worship of the Lord, as we read in verses 11 to 13. Worship springs from the inward recognition of who the Lord is, that is, Creator, King, and Judge in verses 5, 10 and 13. Worship thus involves remembering God's past acts, creation, celebrating his present wonders, God's sustaining of the world and his present reign, and anticipating his future deeds, end-time judgment, and a new life in a new heavens and earth. Judgment in the Psalms means restoration of the divine order of peace, justice and well-being in a world presently burdened by injustice and suffering. Hence, the whole earth rejoices in anticipation of God's judgments in verses 10 to 13, and we'll compare that with Psalm 98 verses 4 to 9. Shout joyfully to the Lord, all the earth. Break forth in song, rejoice and sing praises. Sing to the Lord with the harp and the sound of a psalm, with trumpets and the sound of a horn. Shout joyfully before the Lord, the King. Let the sea roar and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, let the hills be joyful together before the Lord, for he is coming to judge the earth. With righteousness he shall judge the world and the peoples with equity. The fact that the Lord is a righteous judge should additionally motivate people to worship him in holiness and tremble, and should caution them against taking worship lightly, as it said in verse 9. Worship involves both immense joy and confidence, as we read in verses 1 and 2 and 11, 12 and 13, and holy fear and awe in verses 4 and 9. The universal appeal of Psalm 96 to worship the Creator and the Judge is reflected in God's final gospel proclamation to the world, the three angels' messages of Revelation 14, verses 6 to 12. In many ways, this psalm seems to incorporate this end-time message: creation, salvation, the everlasting gospel, worship, and judgment. It's all there. And so to finish today, compare this psalm with the three angels' messages of Revelation 14, verses 6 to 12. In what ways does it teach the same basic truths as does this end-time message that we are to proclaim to the world? And so we finish with Revelation 14, beginning at verse 6. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and springs of water. And another angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or on his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment ascends for ever and ever. And they have no rest day or night who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.